As long as you take care of all that sort of stuff, you're easily going to get 200,000+ miles on these. Hey everyone, Jake from 80/20 Automotive here. Recently, I talked about the 1.6 liter Miata engine, also known as the NA6. So today, here we are to talk about the 1.8 liter engine that was used in the NA and NB Miatas. These engines were used from 1994 all the way until 2005 on the NA and NB Miatas. And of course, there were a number of revisions that were done throughout the years. So we have 3 different variations of engines that were produced in a 1.8 liter form. And that first is going to be what's commonly known as the NA8, or the 1.8 liter that was used from 1994 to 1997 in the NA Miatas. And then we have the NB1, which is the BP4W that was used in the 99 through 2000s. And then from 2001 to 2005, we have the NB2, which is also known as the BPZ3 engine. So there were a handful of changes throughout the years, namely things like variable valve timing, changing up the cylinder heads to improve flow, some changes to the lifters, and so on and so forth. But overall, all 3 of these variants of this engine are extremely reliable, bulletproof, and near indestructible, which is similar to the 1.6 liter. These engines have a strong cast iron block and they can easily last 200,000+ miles. And the reason that I say they're indestructible and bulletproof is because even without doing proper maintenance, they are very hard to kill. So when we talk about common problems and reliability, one of the things that you'll notice is most of the problems on this list really are more so maintenance items or age-related items, and there are very few things that ultimately can kill these engines. With that being said, let's go ahead and jump into our list of common problems with the 1.8 liter BP engine family. The first most common issue is going to be oil leaks. The most common spot to get oil leaks is going to be from the valve cover gasket. It's also common to get them from the cam and crank seals, but the valve cover gasket is more so going to be a question of when it happens, not if it happens. As you get to higher mileages, oil leaks are going to become common on these things. Second, just like the NA 1.6 liter, these 1.8 liter engines still use a bad radiator design. The radiators are aluminum, but they use plastic end tanks on the side of them, and so those end tanks on the side are known to crack and leak and cause the radiator to fail, which ultimately leads to overheating. So the radiator is still a big problem on these 1.8 liters, and that's true all the way from 94 all the way until 2005. One of the best reliability upgrades that you can do is getting an all aluminum radiator, just because these radiators will crack, and a lot of times it's just because of the age of the plastic. So even if you have a very low mileage 1.8 liter, you're probably still going to develop cracks just because of how old it is. And then additionally, the other components of the cooling system are going to become problematic with age as well, and so that's going to be coolant hoses and the water pump. The coolant hoses just get brittle because they're made of rubber over time and will leak, and then the water pump is generally just a common maintenance item on vehicles that it is good to do along with the timing belt. Third on our list is going to be issues with the ignition system, most specifically the ignition coils. The ignition coils are known to fail a little bit more frequently. Again, more so a maintenance item, but just something to know that the coils on these engines, same as the 1.6 liters, do fail a bit more frequently and are a common maintenance item. And then fourth, that goes along with the water pump comments that I was making, is going to be timing belt maintenance. The 1.8 liter engine is not an interference engine, so if you do run into issues with the timing belt snapping or stretching, it's going to go ahead and throw timing off, but it's not going to cause any catastrophic engine damage. So it can cause you to end up stranded on the side of the road, but it isn't something that's going to cause significant internal engine damage. And so just a heads up that timing belt maintenance is a thing here, and the timing belt will need to be replaced at probably a 150,000 mile service interval. handle. And then the fifth problem that I'm going to mention here is going to be specific to the first generation BPZE or BP05 engines that came with the hydraulic lifters. These are known to experience collapsed lifters. It's definitely not a super common problem, but it does tend to become a little bit more of a problem on cars that have sat for a long time and haven't been driven. The NB1s and NB2s are pretty much safe from this. And again, it's not super common, especially on NA8s that are driven a lot, but if it sits a long time without being driven, this becomes a little bit more common of a problem. And that's really it for the main kind of common problems or maintenance items on these 1.8 liter engines. There are a handful of other kind of caveats if you're looking at doing performance builds, things like the oil pump or the pump gears, also the cylinder heads. The BP4Ws are known to flow a little bit better. And then once you start talking about throwing boost on these things and adding a bunch of power, the connecting rods become the weak point. And then lastly, these 1.8 liter BP engines do also suffer from oil consumption. Once you start getting oil consumption, it's usually at very high mileages, and it comes predominantly from wear on the piston rings, but it also can come from the valve stems. But if you start consuming a lot of oil at a high mileage, it's a pretty good indicator that your piston rings have worn down and oil is seeping past them. I have a big problem with this on my 1.6 liter to where it's using like a quart of oil every 250 miles, but the thing still just wants to run. It's a similar thing that you have with these 1.8 liter engines where they do start to consume oil at high mileage levels. Ultimately, it doesn't lead to a whole lot of problems so long as you keep them topped off on oil. And guys, that covers it for our list of problems with the 1.8 liter engine. These engines, like I mentioned, are extremely reliable and nearly bulletproof, and so you're unlikely to run into a whole lot of problems with them so long as you do your basic maintenance, frequent oil changes, keep them topped up on oil, stay on top of the timing belt service intervals, and then stay on top of the cooling system, because the cooling system and overheating is really the one only thing that will send these to the graveyard sooner than they need to go there. As long as you take care of all that sort of stuff, you're easily going to get 200,000+ miles on these, and they'll continue running beyond that even when they're not running well. They just keep running. That's it for the 1.8 liter, guys. We're going to do a video here shortly on the NC 2.0 liter, so if you guys appreciate this Miata content, go ahead and subscribe to our channel, click that like button, and stay tuned for all our future videos.